This weekend on the original Rochester Press Box.
I'm Pat Duffy from the Break Room on 96.5 WCMF. I'm going to tell you why the person most concerned with who the Bills hire for the new head coach should be the Buffalo Sabres head coach.
And I'm John Ditullio. Could we see a trend be happening in college football?
And I'm Mike Catalana. I'm going to tell you what is literally my biggest pet peeve.
I'm Bill Pucko. I'm afraid we've seen the best of LeBron James already. Join us this weekend on the original Rochester Press Box. Hello, everyone, and welcome into the original Rochester Press Box. Bill Pucko here with you, and as always joined by, from Fox Sports 1280, John Ditullio.
Billy, it's good to be with you in
Happy
2015.
New Year,
I was a little worried if I was going to be welcome back in 2015.
Well,
It's great to be with you.
we ran it through the process, and we decided by a narrow vote. Yeah. Mike Catalana,
Love you,
13 WHAM News.
And he still keeps his 18 weeks of vacation from the show, right?
Is it 18?
I won't be here next week.
I
just letting you know.
And back our 2014 Rookie of the Year.
Oh!
I wish it would have been more of a competition, but unfortunately I am that good at this.
I didn't vote, I'll just say.
And we're braced for the sophomore slump. So Duffy, we'll start with you. Look, the last time we did one of these shows, it was just before we played the New England Patriots, and everything was, reasonably great for the Buffalo Bills. What happened?
Being a Bill season ticket holder, I despise Doug Marrone for what he did. But I think for Terry Pegula, everything that happened with, Marrone leaving, with we're going to get rid of some of the old guard whose contracts are up, this might be the best thing that could have happened to Terry Pegula in the offseason. You get rid of what a lot of people thought were dead weight, and now you're bringing in people that you wanted to bring in without having to fire anybody. We're going to get to see what he can do as a franchise owner. I mean, for real, because you can't count the Sabres. He's been trying to move pieces in and out. He doesn't really know what he's doing. He said it himself. He's more a football guy than a hockey guy. So it keeps him looking good, and now he's got his own people in there when everything finishes up.
Can you mark the tape right here as I say this? I agree with everything Duffy said.
Rookie of the Year?
I do. I agree with everything you said in that way, and I think it worked out this way. Not necessarily it was the plan, but I keep saying to people, the idea with Doug Marrone was not the idea that you'd have him for another year and see what would happen. Two options with Doug Marrone. Either he was going to opt out like he did, or you were going to have to sign him to a long-term extension. Do you really want that? Do you really want to commit to him for 5 or 6 years? The contract that they gave him with the opt-out was very generous, I would say, that he got. Yeah. But he got it. So Terry Pegula inherited that. That's what he had. Marrone, as a businessman, was smart for taking it. But I would say at this point, I'd rather have the guy that's all in than the guy that's opting out.
It looks murky and dysfunctional now. It really does. Bill Polian quit on him. Orton quit on him. And Doug Marrone quit on him. I mean, they almost hit for the cycle, basically, if you think about it. But I think gone down the road, what Duffy says, in a few months or in a month, maybe in a few weeks, they're going to have a new head coach. And I like Doug Marrone, but it's not as if Bill Belichick got up and quit on the Bills, right? And I don't know if I wanted, watch how a 72-year-old coming in and running the show in Bill Polian. I was not comfortable with that. It sounds great. Bill Polian's coming back. What bothered me the most is that the people at One Bills Drive, who are so arrogant beyond belief in that building when they've done nothing over the last 15 years, kind of threw Polian under the bus, if we are to believe Doug Marrone told Polian that people were throwing you under the bus. The fact that anybody in Orchard Park would have an opinion negative about Bill Polian says so much about that organization.
All right.
For a team that hasn't won a playoff game in almost 20 years, they are so arrogant beyond belief.
And I will give John that in terms of Bill Polian and his history.
Yes.
We're not talking about Bill Polian's history. We're talking about Bill Polian's present. And I think it bothers me a little bit. I think Bill Polian, honestly, and everybody respects everything he's done, I think he wanted the easy route here a little bit. I think that's why he
said as much.
It's heavy lifting. Yeah. Because Bill Polian, and I said this to you guys, he wants to be in the Hall of Fame. He deserves to be in the Hall of Fame. He's going to get that vote. But what he wanted for that Hall of Fame was to sit back, wait till he gets voted in, come to Buffalo with a veteran quarterback. Maybe they draft a guy in March or in May now when the draft is. He still has his Doug Marrone in place. Well, if you got your coach and your quarterback, at least in the short term, what are we hiring the guy to do? He didn't want that. that meant he would have had to start right away. And I think that's in part what some of the bad blood is in Orchard Park.
I think you guys are putting the absolute most positive spin on this thing that you possibly can. I don't know whether it's intentional or not, but with about a minute left on it, this could still really blow up in their faces.
Is it that impossible, to John's point, to find someone as good or better than Doug Marrone?
Well,
Last word on this.
If Marrone stays and it blows up, well, you were an idiot for keeping him. If you hire a new coach and it blows up, well, it's his first year. You buy yourself some more time here with what happened with Marrone.
Thanks for joining us. This is the Original Rochester Press Box, and we'll be back. Welcome back to the Original Rochester Press Box. Bill, John, Mike, and Duffy with you. John, subject near and dear to your heart, the Baseball Hall of Fame. How'd they do this year?
3 for 4. I'm not, listen, is Craig Biggio the best of the best? I don't think so. I mean, 20 years, he got 3,000 hits. I'll tip my cap to him. I would have put, listen, is Tim Raines a Hall of Famer? Maybe a borderline. I know he didn't get in, but they hit a home run with Smoltz. They hit a home run with Randy Johnson and Pedro Martinez. There's no question about it. How Mike Piazza's not in the Hall of Fame. He's the greatest hitting catcher I ever saw. Is he the best catcher I ever saw? No, that's Johnny Bench. After that, Piazza's in a discussion. Is there suspicions of PEDs? Of course. But there's no concrete evidence he took anything to enhance his play on the field. I would have put Piazza in. I wouldn't have put Biggio in. And Clemens and Bonds are going to get in. They're around 40% right now. Yeah. I think over the next 5 years, they'll both get in.
Piazza's a lightning rod in all of this, because how we think of Mike Piazza is really still how we're talking about the steroid era, isn't it?
Yeah, and I just don't like the whole process. You got Buster Olney complaining about the process and abstaining from his vote, and I understand what his thinking is. He doesn't like the way the vote is because a vote, putting in a vote and not voting for a guy is like a vote again. That is a convoluted system. And we talk about the Heisman. I vote for the Heisman. It's an electronic vote, impressive looking. I saw a guy's Hall of Fame ballot. Did anybody see any of the actual ballots? It looks like when you're putting your lunch order in when you were in grade school. It's like a piece of paper, and they mark it and mail the thing in. Yeah. They are behind the times in many, many ways, but I like the fact that guys are going in. Yeah. Make the argument Craig Biggio borderline and all, but at least he's borderline, and at least they're voting people in.
I think he gets in relevant because all the other guys aren't getting in. And then next year, Ken Griffey Jr.'s up. Trevor Hoffman's coming up next year. So, Fred McGriff should probably be in the Hall of Fame, too. Mike Mussina. I think Kurt Schilling's going to get in.
Well, what surprised me the most about Piazza is how close he was versus how far McGuire was in his second to last year. He's got 1 year to go, right? Yep. What did he get? Just over 10% of the vote? So I think suspicion equals guilt. I mean, you could sit here and tell me, yeah, we never found out anything about Mike Piazza. Look me in the face and tell me you don't think he took anything while he was playing.
I think we have a right to think like that, though. Suspicion equals guilt. I mean, this is what Barry Bonds and Roger Clemens wrought on all of us. Yeah. I've always said I thought that a side effect of using steroids was to become a compulsive liar.
Well, you're right. And the other part is I think McGuire's an easy guy for people to vote against. And I may be in the minority here. I think he's a borderline Hall of Famer anyhow. Hit a bunch of home runs, did virtually nothing else. He was that guy and hit a bunch of home runs. So if you have any suspicions about him, compared to Bonds or Clemens, I think McGuire is way down on the list.
I saw Bonds break in Pittsburgh. He's the best player I ever saw before the alleged use. To me, he may be the best player we've seen in the last 30 years with or without steroids. And Clemens, let's face it, Bill, you know his career. One of the best right-handers of all time. He'll get in. We'll see how everything unfolds in years to come. Alex Rodriguez is going to be interesting when his career, whenever that should end. What do the voters do with Alex Rodriguez?
They'll ignore him. But I think Piazza becomes an historic figure here because when he gets in next year, and he will, because it's trending up, I think he's the guy that opens the door for all of these and allows everyone to reconsider what we've done over the past 10 years.
You think they're going to ignore Alex Rodriguez completely?
Yeah.
Well, I mean, I
don't know.
I wonder how much of the steroid stuff is old baseball writers versus new baseball writers, because by the time A-Rod eventually hangs it up, we could lose 10% of those old school baseball writers that are so adamantly against steroids that don't understand how the game was for the last 15 years.
That still means keeping 90% of them.
But, I mean, yeah, you're right, you're right. But it's possible there's a changing of the tide as time goes on, and 20 years from now we look down the road and it's not even a blip anymore.
And there's a danger the whole Hall of Fame becomes irrelevant if these guys don't get in, because Biggio might be close, but there'll be a series of stat compiling guys that no one has a question about that become Hall of Famers who maybe weren't great players.
Like it or not, with the Distillery when we return. This segment of the Rochester Press Box is brought to you by The Distillery. 4 convenient locations, The Distillery, your choice destination for Sunday brunch with great food and drink specials, plus all of the games. The Distillery, a Best of Rochester award winner. Tap into good times at The Distillery. Welcome back to the original Rochester Press Box. Like it or not segment is brought to you by The Distillery. You can get 2-for-1 margaritas all week long and half-price appetizers from 9 to 12, Sunday through Thursday. Like it or not, this isn't really a like it or not question, Duffy, but Stuart Scott passed this past week at the age of 49 from cancer. How do you judge? How do you look at Stuart Scott's career?
Well, I mean, I was coming of age sports-wise. Let's say I was born in '86. I'm sorry, guys.
You're sorry that you were born?
Well, I'm sorry what that just did to you. No. So I was, 7 years old in '93 when he started on ESPN, and it was guys like him and Dan Patrick, Rich Eisen, that made me want to get into media like this. I mean, It wasn't just watching a show. It wasn't like it used to be. It wasn't just Musburger and Cosell and guys like that. They put their own personality into sports. And it was just a couple of guys taking a risk. And from where it was there to where it is now, that's everybody. If you're successful in this business, you have to do what they were doing. And for him and those two guys to take the risks that they did and end up being, national treasures. When he died on Saturday morning. Sunday morning.
Sunday
morning.
morning.
Okay. Yep. I was like, oh, that's too bad. And I start reading stuff on Twitter. Everything on Twitter, everything on Facebook, everything on every part of the internet was all Stuart Scott and stories about him and things that he'd done. And I don't think it was till that point that I realized what an effect he had on everybody, not only in the business, but pop culture-wise.
I asked Tariq Spence, I saw him just today, African-American sportscaster. He said he made me want to do this.
Yeah.
Be a sportscaster.
It's his legacy. You're right. He was a trailblazer.
Yeah, and I give him credit because it was not always all that popular, and I listened to some of the other ESPN anchors, even inside the building sometimes, because his style was a little bit different. But he was dedicated to it. He had fun with it, which is also an important thing. Some of these guys take themselves way too seriously, and he did have an impact on people and a long career.
And I know that you love to pick on ESPN. I think ESPN deserves a little bit of credit for hanging with him, because there was an avalanche of criticism when he came on.
Absolutely, and they were. Hey, look, at that time, and even before his time, I loved the things that they did. I didn't grow up watching it. I was already a grown-up when they came around.
Sorry about
but I really enjoyed it. I think some of the things now, they've gotten away from that a little bit, and there's some imitators to what they did. He was, without question, an original. I think you would say that.
Johnny, like it or not, Oregon, Ohio State.
Love it. Are you kidding me? Improbable that Ohio State has beaten Wisconsin and then really took apart Alabama in that fourth quarter with a third-string quarterback. Urban Meyer is the best coach in football. I'll put him up against anyone. The fact what he has done at Utah, what he's done at Florida, and what he's done now at Ohio State with a third-string quarterback is amazing. I'll still take Oregon tonight. I'll take the team with a better quarterback and an underrated defense. Ohio State's front four is incredible, but Oregon's got an underrated defense. I'll take Marcus Mariota.
And you managed to do that without mentioning Penn State, who could have ruined the entire scenario.
I was at that game. I thought we got jobbed, pushing the butt. Ohio State admits that was the turning point of their season.
Overtime.
Double overtime in a hostile environment really flipped their season.
I think this is an important time, too, in college football. I think Ohio State doing what they're doing.
Yeah.
Oregon's already kind of done that for the Pac-12, but them doing that, Harbaugh going to Michigan has elevated that whole conference. And Northern football, Northern and the West,
I agree.
SEC is still a monster, but now you've got legitimate competition.
Well, you can make an argument. This is one of the most important college football games in the last 2 decades. You know, if Alabama gets in and they lose, man, they're still in the SEC, no big deal. You got a team in Ohio State that's fighting for the Big Ten. The Big Ten's a joke. That's all you hear all season long. Well, they just beat Alabama. And then you have a team in Oregon who's fighting for themselves. They're a flash-in-the-pan team. What they do doesn't work. They're going to figure it out. Well, nobody's figured it out over the last 10 years. So if one of these teams loses, they're justifying what everyone else is saying. Either the Big Ten is terrible or Oregon can't play legitimate football.
Yeah, that, and I maintain this is Super Bowl I for college football.
Love
it's
it.
historic in that sense. From this point on, and the whole rest of your young life, they're going to be marking everything in college football from what happened this year. Unfinished business when we return.
And you don't need to be Native American to realize it is offensive. And it's not politically correct. It's the right thing to do.
He was an idiot for throwing him that pitch. The guy's phenomenal. He had no reason to give him anything, especially a fastball to hit.
It's simply that these two guys, Ronaldo and Tom Brady, are too good looking.
I like it, just don't admit to it.
Everybody wants to hate on the best in the world. He's here to stay, and he wants to build something big time.
The bottom line is, still nobody's going to like A-Rod.
Welcome back to the original Rochester Press Box. Time for Unfinished Business. Johnny.
I want to talk college football. A few years ago, Russell Wilson, who had already graduated at NC State but still had a year of eligibility left, transferred to Wisconsin, led the Badgers to a Big Ten title, led them to the Rose Bowl, and eventually led to him being selected in the third round by Seattle. Next year, keep your eye on 2 quarterbacks. One happens to be Braxton Miller out of Ohio State. He was the Heisman hopeful. He was going to be the senior quarterback to lead Ohio State to the national championship. Didn't work out. He got hurt in camp. But now he's earned his degree, which means he can transfer without sitting out. He could either end up at Florida State or LSU. How would that be? Florida State loses Jameis Winston, welcome in another Heisman hopeful in Miller. Another guy is Everett Golston at Notre Dame, who will earn his degree in May. And there's stories that he may transfer. Let's face it, he lost his job to Malik Zaire, who quarterbacked Notre Dame to the victory over LSU. So you could see Golston playing at either LSU or Florida State, and you're going to see Braxton Miller playing again next year at either LSU or Florida State. I don't know if it's going to be, this may be an exception, could be a trend around college football. Get your degree, you feel like you're not going to play, go and transfer somewhere else. Maybe Cardell Jones will do that eventually. If he gets his degree, he bolts Ohio State because he may never beat out J.T. Barrett to play.
Yeah, I was surprised. Russell Wilson all of a sudden shows up in Wisconsin. How'd that happen?
And how much did that help him? I don't know if he would have been is he a third-round pick? I don't know if he even gets drafted if he comes out of NC State and enters the draft.
Yeah. What do you got for us, Duff?
Well, we were talking about the Bills head coaching search earlier, and there's one person in Western New York who should be especially paying attention to who the Bills hire, and that is Sabres head coach Ted Nolan. Nobody knows what to do with him at this point. You start the season off the way they thought they were going to. There's not enough talent. Things aren't going to work out. But all of a sudden, the Sabres catch fire. They win 8-9, 9-10, whatever it was, 15-16 on the road, 1,005. The bottom line was Nolan had them in line. They were working hard, and they were winning games that they shouldn't have won. And fans decided they were winning games that they should have won. Well, let's go back 3 weeks from now. They go on this slide again, and everyone's starting to call for Nolan's head. Well, we're going to figure out where Terry Pegula's head is with this hire that he makes for the Buffalo Bills. If I'm Ted Nolan, I'm praying to God that he's picking a blue-collar, hard-working guy to take over the Buffalo Bills. No big names, no Cowers, not that it's possible, or Shanahans, or anything of that nature, no Rex Ryan. I want a guy that I've never seen before that he thinks is going to work hard for me. Because if I'm Ted Nolan, I'm a little bit worried that this team, this young group that I whipped into shape to be ready to win, is going to end up winning for another guy coaching the Sabres, if not next season, the season afterwards.
Yeah, there is a connection to the slide started when Brian Giunta got hurt. Mm-hmm. And then Brian Giunta's a very important guy, maybe not in terms of points, but since Giunta's been out of the lineup, they haven't been the same team. All right, I'm going to go away from sports, but it's kind of connected to sports a little bit. I have a big pet peeve. I have several of them, but this is one. And it's the use, very big pet peeve. It's the use of the word literally, when people will say that. And I joke all the time when people will misuse it. They'll say the guy literally carried the team on his back. Well, no, he didn't. That would mean he actually had other players on his back walking off the field. So we always joke about it, and I always talk about the use of the word literal. And now, Webster's Dictionary and Google, among others, have added a secondary meaning to the word literal, which is basically the opposite meaning. It's now permissible to use literally as figuratively, if you're following my drift. So you can say, that literally made my head explode. Well, no, it didn't, if you get what I'm saying. It's used in sports all the time, like many other words, and how you're allowing this word, which was such a perfect word and a pure word, to go in its opposite direction, I don't know. I would say it is literally a sign of the apocalypse.
You know, the one that gets me is the one, and we use it all the time, is that one, I could care less. That means I could care less. It's I couldn't care less.
You're not
that
the guy
gets
that
me.
like stops people and says something.
I am.
Yes, he is.
I am that person.
Yeah.
My last thing is, look, the Cleveland Cavaliers, the NBA, the Cleveland Cavaliers are a bit of a mess, and I don't know if it's going to come together for them or not. They have more problems than we really have time to discuss here, or might really want to. But the biggest one is LeBron James is injured. LeBron James has and it's not even just one injury. It's like several things are going wrong with him. And that's a big problem for all of us, because LeBron James just turned 30. He's falling apart. I just realized, sitting back and says, we have already seen the best LeBron James has to offer. It happened 2.5 years ago. John and I were watching him single-handedly take the Boston Celtics out of the 2012 NBA playoffs in Game 6. He was unbelievable. It's as good as he's ever going to be. It's hard to realize, but at age 30, LeBron has already put the best of his basketball, I fear, behind him. He's never been injured before. He's injured now. And Duffy, you're going to be 30 sometime, and you'll know exactly someday what I'm talking
We
about.
got a while, boys.
I would say one thing about LeBron. I think he's played an incredible amount of minutes and an incredible amount of games.
Yeah.
I think he needs a little bit of a reset.
We'd like to thank the Distillery for sponsoring the Rochester Press Box, our Like It or Not segment. The Distillery, of course, if you want to go down there and watch the Philadelphia Eagles postseason games, that's the place to go. Thanks, guys. John,
Billy,
good job.
great show today.
Michael, I got that in.
Yeah, it is good. Sophomore slump has begun.
I was going to ask if you want to get a sandwich. Forget it now.
Thank you for watching. We'll see you again next week on the original Rochester Press Box.